Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Doug. I'm a wildlife photographer from Gilroy, California. In this video, I'm going to do a deep dive into all these buttons and dials of this thing right here. This is the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. We're also going to go into the menu settings. We'll go through all the key ones for bird and wildlife photography. Not going into the people and face recognition modes for basketball and volleyball. That's a sports photographer. I'm a wildlife photographer. There's a lot of similarities between the two, but I'm not going into those modes here. This is already going to be about 2 hours long, so that's long enough. We'll also go into the quick menu. I'll show you how to do this, get all this junk out of here basically, and just put the key buttons that you need here. Look at this new button. We got a new pre-roll button up here that we need to talk about. Absolutely so cool. I love it. We got all these new autofocus areas to talk about. There's 12 autofocus areas. Those are the sights of the BB gun, right? That's, you put that on the target, squeeze the trigger to take the picture. But they do a lot of different things. But then they're influenced by these things. Subject tracking, which is called whole area tracking, sort of all, it's subject tracking. And then, of course, subject to detect, that influences the autofocus point. So we have an awful lot to talk about today. Let's get into it. All right, guys, in this part of the video, we're going to do a full factory reset just so we're all on the same page, or at least some of us are on the same page. Again, if you don't need this, just jump ahead to the next section. I have a full table of contents down below. So let's go into the menu and introduce that at least. Here's the menu. It's 3 layers deep. We have main icons up at the top. And then we have a sub menu. Used to be numbers here, but those are gone now, but you can still see the number here. If we move the main dial, you can see how we rotate through those. Underneath the sub-menu numbers, we have the actual menu items. So we want to go over to number 5, I believe. Reset camera. You can also tap the screen to do this if you want. I'm going to try to keep my hands off the screen for you. Go to factory reset. You can tap on that or push the set button. Click OK. And there we go. We just have to wait for it. It turns off. It'll power back on here in a second. Wait for it. There it comes. Choose your language, English, and you can set up the time and date. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'll just hit OK. I'm going to hit that button so it doesn't bug me about it. And great. So now we are all on the same page. If you just got yours out of the box, we're exactly on the same page. Now I have some work to do so I can make this work for my back camera here. You can see it's timing out. It's blown out for my back camera. So let's fix these problems. First thing I need to do is get this out of auto ISO. So just hit this button here. That's your ISO button. And we can jump up to 800. And there, we're out of auto ISO now. Next problem, we're in program mode. So we want to be in full manual, always shoot in full manual. So give the mode button a push straight in, and you can see we're in the P program mode. Let's just scroll over and put this in full manual. Again, if you're just starting out, always shoot in full manual. Learn the exposure triangle. Great, and now we are too dark, so let's bring up the ISO. And that should be just about right for my camera back there. All right, next thing, I'm going to turn all the power savings settings off. All right, back into the menu. Let's go to the wrench, and they're on sub-menu 4, power savings. Let's get rid of all those power savings. Okay, screen dimmer, shut it off. Auto power off, shut it off. And I do this for real when I go out birding. I have extra batteries. So the bird of your life comes into view and this thing is asleep. 1001, 1002, maybe 1003, that bird is gone and the camera's just waking up. So strongly recommend disabling all these. Although the camera does come on pretty fast. If I shut it off, it comes on, I'd say almost twice as fast as the EOS R5 Mark I version. So it took me a long time to get an extra battery, so I did have to use those power savings modes. So they're okay, but I'm telling you, you'll miss that bird of your life will come into view for 2 seconds and you won't get it because of those. All right, that'll do it for this section. Let's go to the next one. All right, let's go through all the buttons and dials here. I'll show you what they do stock out of the box. I'll tell you how we're going to modify them. I'll save all the button modifications for one section though. So we'll start in the front, we'll go to the top, and we'll work our way to the back. We're going to start with a button called the DOF button. You can probably get a glimpse of it right there. That's the depth of field button. What does that do? So it turns out that the viewfinder and the LCD screen always show you the shallowest depth of field that your lens has to offer. This is a f4 lens, so everything is f4 here. So if I go down and get Gumby, and I have to change my autofocus point to do this, so just bear with me, and I'll explain all this stuff when the time comes. All right, now that we have a locked autofocus area or autofocus point, I can demonstrate this. Let's also narrow our aperture or increase our f number to demonstrate this. We'll go up to like f13. Should be fine. Make some modifications here to get things back. That's great. All right, so let me get this stuff off the screen for you. All right, let's get Gumby with a autofocus point, also known as autofocus area. And you know the name of the game, right? These are like BB gun sights. We put the sight on the target. We start up the autofocus by, well, we could hit the AF on button to start it. It turns blue. Or we could hit the shutter button here, which is the way most people shoot. That's the way I shoot these days. And then take the picture. You push all the way down. And the pictures are automatically displaying on the screen. We'll get rid of that annoyance as well. But the point is here, if I start up the autofocus, look how blurry the owl is back there. And if I leave it there, I think it's on one shot. So see how blurry it is? That's not the true depth of field. That's an f4 depth of field because we're up at f13. So to see the true depth of field, all you have to do is push the DOF button. And I'm doing that with my ring finger pad here. And I have it trained to do that very well. If I push that, look how clear the owl becomes. That's the true depth of field. Okay, I don't need that. I would rather assign that button to eye detection on, eye detection off. But that's what it does stock out of the box. And as I said, I'll assign all the buttons later on. Now let's get these settings a little more realistic for bird photography. All right, great. Moving up to the top of the camera now, of course, we have the shutter button. I already told you that you half press the shutter. That starts up the autofocus system. Don't worry, I'm going to explain the four components of the autofocus system in a little bit. And then you push it all the way down and it takes a picture. How many pictures does it take? Well, it depends what your drive mode is set to. Where do you find your drive mode? You can just hit this Q button. It's probably the easiest place to find it. And now we have a menu with 2 columns and a lot of stuff in here. We're going to get rid of a lot of that stuff. But if we go down, and it does time out, if we go down to this button with the H plus there, there's your drive mode. So we have a high-speed continuous plus. That's the fastest this will shoot. I'm in electronic right now, which is kind of the way everybody's going these days. This is a stack sensor, so there's no problem with rolling shutter for what I do. Baseball might be another thing, and golf swings, but it's much, much improved over the R7, for goodness sakes, and even the R5. But anyway, high-speed continuous plus as fast as we're shooting 30 frames per second. Let's listen to it. Pretty darn cool. I absolutely love that mode. Your card's going to fill up faster, so you might need bigger SD cards, or of course, you always want to use one of these. So this is a CF Express card type B. There's a single slot for these. I'm disappointed it didn't have 2 slots, so we could get rid of SD cards altogether. But slot 1 is a CF Express card type B. These are Angel Bird. They work great. I have a whole bunch of these things. So anyway, that's the story with that, with high-speed continuous plus. If we go to the next one, that's high-speed continuous. So that drops down to, I believe it's set to 15 frames per second. And the cool thing about the drive mode now, we can actually change it. So that is so cool. I'll show you how to do that. Then we drop down another one. We have low speed, continuous. I believe that's at 5 frames per second. Let's listen to that one. Okay, a bird just sitting around. I mean, that's probably good for it, but I never shoot that low. I always shoot 12 or 15 frames per second. Okay, there are shutter modes that we need to talk about. So there's a electronic first curtain, which I like. I used to use that one all the time, but I've been shooting a lot of Fox lately, and they don't like any noise at all, so I've gotten away from it. And now the rolling shutter problem is gone. I pretty much shoot in electronic all the time. There's also an old school mechanical mode. They only shoot in 12 frames per second, so it's just kind of slow for me. So I keep mine in electronic nowadays. All right, there's some other modes here. There's a 10-second delay timer. So if you hit that, you can hear it beeping and it's flashing. You can run out in front of the camera and take the picture. If you do a selfie and run out in front of the camera, you want to switch the autofocus so it's always on and always working. It's not marked so well in here, but I'll show you that when the time comes. Okay, what else is in there? And then there's a 2-second timer, and yeah, there's a single shot mode, of course, if you go all the way to the left. So that just takes an old school single picture, and it's being automatically displayed. If you want to see the last picture, it times out. Just hit the playhead button here, and that pops right up. Great. All right, moving back, then let's save the MFN button. We'll go to the main dial here. So that controls the shutter speed, as you can see. So we're not going to modify that. We're going to leave that alone. Then we have the MFN button. So that's a very ergonomically well-placed button, just like the shutter button or the release button. I think they call it on the other side of the pond. Front button, some people call it. But it's right there. It's so easy to hit with your index finger. And stock out of the box, if you hit it, it pulls up a double road menu system. And you can toggle by shutting the quick control dial number 2. We just call it the top dial. You can toggle between the different options here. If we want to go with, let's say, the top one, it shows you, see the half cog? That will do the sub menu beneath there. So those are the drive modes. And if we turn it off and come back to it, it will stay stuck there. So you could potentially use it for your autofocus points. If we scroll over to the autofocus points, see them down there? That shows the quick control dial number 1 is the controller of the autofocus points. So you could scroll between there, and it will remember that. So if you leave it stock out of the box and you hit it, there's a sub menu, and you have to remember to turn the back dial or quick control dial number 1. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to set this up to toggle between the autofocus areas or autofocus point, which is the key for birding, right? You're constantly flipping between different autofocus areas. So, I mean, it works, but it really doesn't work. We'll fix that. So that's what the MFN button does stock out of the box. All right, next we have an emergency movie on button. If I hit that, it immediately starts taking a video. And I have no control over the settings on this thing. There is an exposure compensation, so at least you can control that because it's set in auto ISO. So at least that's the good thing. But I can't control anything else. And I don't like it. I accidentally hit it, and I want to get rid of it. Because if I want the movie mode to come on, I just go over here and I flick it over to movie mode. And now I can manipulate things if I want. So there it is there. Why is it acting so weird? Because it's in program mode. So you want full manual over there. Okay, now there's what we're used to. And if we get it out of auto ISO, then we can quickly manipulate the settings however we want, get some of the junk off there. Okay, so there's movie mode. But again, so I have it set up nice. If I turn it off and I hit the emergency movie button, you can see we're blown out again, and there's nothing there to control, right? It's back to that control. How do you control this, by the way? Custom shooting mode 3. You can go in there and make settings in custom mode 3, and I'll show you that when we come to it. That will control the emergency on off. movie start button here. But for me, I'm going to get rid of it because I don't want to accidentally hit it. Great. Next, we have a little illumination button here that if you're in the dark shooting owls or whatever, it lights up the screen there so you can see that. I don't know why you would really use that because you have a screen on the back here that does that. So the good thing about it is the button is modifiable, so we can put things there if we want. But that's what that one does. Next, we have a on-off switch. We've already done that. We can see how fast the camera starts up, significantly faster than the R5 Mark 1, the original, probably twice as fast. So that's really nice. If your battery's running low, you can just walk around like this and shut off. You're going to miss some shots, but not that many. 1001, 1002, and it's definitely on. So in the middle, we have our mode button, so you can go if you like to shoot in shutter priority or aperture priority, which I don't recommend, by the way. Always shoot in manual, but you can do that right there. All right, let's talk about quick control dial number 2, which is right there. I mean, we call this the top dial. If you push it in the middle setting, there's a lock function where it will lock your quick control dial number 1, quick control dial number 2. It'll lock your joystick or your multi-controller up. I've already removed these this is take 2, so I'll show you how to set those, and you can make them even more strict or you can take them off, but I'll show you that later under the menu settings. And then of course the main function of quick control dial number 2 is to control your ISO, and you can see the ISO changing right there as I scroll between different ISO settings. You can also change ISO by tapping right there on the screen. The LCD screen is a full touch control screen. So we can go into that and change the ISO right there by sliding it around. You can tap these kind of jump to settings for ISO that you frequently use. You can even register a new setting. Let's say for whatever reason it's dark and you're shooting owls, you like, I don't know, 25/600. Just hit the register button and then confirm which one of these you want to replace. We'll replace 6400, and now we have a jump to, I guess we went up to 20,000. Okay, so that's how that function works. And let's get this back under control. Let's jump down to 400, it's probably closer. And then use the top dial here to set your ISO to the proper amount, and that's probably good for my back camera there. All right, that takes care of the top. We got the movie on and off button. We talked about that on the other side. Let's move to the back of the camera now. All right, so we have the viewfinder, this is called. Okay, it's a little bit different than the R5 Mark 1, and in fact, I don't quite like it as much. For whatever reason, when I'm holding on a bird that's up above me, and this is pressing it against my glasses, it's more uncomfortable than the R5 Mark 1s. But this is definitely different, and it's okay, but I prefer the original Mark 1s better. We have a diopter setting right here for glasses, so you can lock your autofocus on a stop sign or something where you know it's in focus, and then you can change this to make things more clear. So kind of standard. LCD screen, fully touchable. You can change the exposure triangle right here just by adjusting things, just by tapping. Okay, there's the aperture. Great. And then there's the ISO. To put it in auto ISO, you always slide it all the way to the left, and now it's in auto ISO. We'll talk more about auto ISO later. Let's take that out for right now. You can also select things on here. If I want to get Gumby, you can tap on the screen. Got Gumby. You can tap on the owl. I mean, I don't do this very often, but sometimes if a camera's in an awkward position, maybe I'm on a dock and I'm hanging the camera down with my arm, with one hand, and I can't look in the viewfinder, I can still tap on the subject I like, and it locks on pretty good. So that's the LCD screen. Of course, it's flip out. You can flip it out. You could twist it, just like the R5 Mark 1. Move it around. So it articulates, which is a great feature. Okay, we have a menu over here. Of course, we've already used that. That brings you into the menu. We have a rate button, so you can rate your pictures. If I pull one up and I hit the rate button, we can rate it 3 stars or 4 stars or 5 stars, and that'll carry over into post as well. I never do that, but you could do that if you wanted to. The more important thing with a rate button is that's how you are able to adjust your flexible autofocus areas, which are amazing. The R5 Mark I doesn't have those, and I just love those autofocus boxes where you can adjust them. We can show you that right now. Okay, so the first thing is we have to get on one of the flexible zone, because if I hit the rectangle button and rate, RR, rectangle and rate, nothing happens. Why is that? Because we're not on a adjustable autofocus zone. We're on that single autofocus point with some helpers around it. So to move the autofocus areas for right now, stock out of the box, you hit the rectangle button. That's called the autofocus point selection button. You hit that one, and then it says MFN button is the toggle switch. So you can toggle, and now any one of these will work. Okay, so now if I hit the rectangle button, now see how the rate button shows up? It reminds you to hit the rate button, and now it won't time out, and you can adjust the width and height of that box by those dial settings. So the main dial will control the width of it. Let's make it more usable. Actually, I'm going to leave it the way it is because we're going to modify this again when we come to the buttons. And then the quick control dial number 1, or the back dial, modifies the height. Anyway, that's the story there. Okay, so let me get some of this junk out of here. So the multi-controller, everybody calls it the joystick. So it's just a joystick. You can move the autofocus point around if you want, if you're on a tripod or something. If you want to go back to the center, because sometimes it gets hidden over here, and if I have more information on the screen, you're like, where's my autofocus area? Where's my sight of my BB gun? If you push it straight in, it'll snap it back to the center. So that's the story. I don't think there's anything else we need to talk about. If I do hit it, it does have another function. If I'm in full screen autofocus mode, where the entire screen is the autofocus area. So let me show you. Let's go to that. And let's go to the full screen autofocus box. Now the whole area autofocus, the entire screen is the autofocus box. Watch, if I start up the autofocus, see the white showing the entire screen is now the autofocus box. So now if I hit it, it starts up tracking. If you're on a bird, if I hit it again, sometimes it doesn't turn off and you have to hit the set button to turn it off. But if I'm locked on a bird and I want to stay locked on it, if I push it in, you get this double box. And now I don't even have to touch anything. I can just go around and it tracks that box. It's kind of like a manual, I want you to be the target kind of a button. Okay, the set button does the same thing. If you push the set button in, it pulls that double autofocus box, and the entire screen is now the autofocus area. And so I've had mixed results with it. I prefer not to use it, honestly, and I just prefer to hold the shutter button down, and with eye detection on, it looks like eye detection is off here. Oh no, it's on there. That seems to work fine for me. And even if I take my finger, it kind of automatically tracks. All right. So that's enough about that. Let's bring back another autofocus box again. That's more manageable. So remember how to do that. If there's one thing this video is going to teach you is how to use these autofocus areas. Hit the rectangle button and then it says MFN. So toggle that and it toggles these. The ones that are locked are not going to go crazy on you. I'll explain that more later, but that's a good one to start off with. Great. All right, next, moving over, we have the AF On button. So that is a workhorse of a button. Whether you set up front button autofocus, where the shutter button is going to start up the autofocus system, or you decide to go with triple back button autofocus, where these buttons will all start up the autofocus, this one is a workhorse. And stock out of the box, if you push it, see how the sight of the BB gun turns blue? You're starting up the autofocus system. And you can take a picture and it'll be very, very clear. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I'll show you how to modify that later. Moving this way, we have an AE lock button. So that will lock autofocus on something. And then no matter where you go, it won't auto detect or it won't go off there. I believe that's how that works. I never use that one. We're going to set that up for something else, but it's called the AE lock button. You can read up on that one more yourself. Then, of course, we have this is called the autofocus point selection button. We just call it the rectangle button. We've talked about this. So if you push this, all the autofocus points come up. It does time out, but it tells you right there that if you hit the MFN button, you can toggle between all 12 of these things. And we'll introduce these in the next section. In my opinion, this will make or break you as a great bird photographer. You have to learn to master these things. What else is up there? So it says if we push the arrow, it gets us out of that program. That's not so amazing. All right, guys, let me show you one more thing this rectangle button does. And this is a little complicated, and I hesitate to show you now because I have to go through the entire autofocus menu first so you understand the difference between subject tracking, subject recognition, and the autofocus areas and the interplay between them. But let's see if we can just figure this out quickly. I have an autofocus box up here. It's called single point around, but I have one modification on it. And the modification is I have subject detection on. So what that means is when I half press to start up the autofocus system, which is on my shutter button right now, the autofocus system has permission to go outside the boundaries of the autofocus box by a little bit. See, I'm off the owl right now, yet the autofocus box has kind of mutated, and it's got a picture of the owl, which I can show you proof of right there. So that wouldn't be possible with the locked autofocus boxes. So this thing I'm going to show you only works for boxes that are not locked. If I'm on this box and an eagle is coming in the clear blue sky and I want a bigger autofocus box, I can hit the rectangle button and the info button and watch what happens right there. See how I'm toggling on and off something, that little flashlight icon, circle with some lines, horizontal lines to the right of it. When I toggle this on, that switches on tracking, subject tracking. And with subject tracking on, the autofocus system looks quickly inside the box and it makes the box disappear. See how the box went the entire screen now? So that's tracking. You can always tell when tracking or subject tracking is on. So it's a quick toggle if you hit the rectangle button and hit the info button. Now it's off, so we're back to staying in or near the perimeter of that box. So that does not work with any of the locked boxes where subject tracking and subject recognition are off. And I know that's confusing for you, but once we get to the autofocus menu, I'm going to explain that again a little more deeply and things will start to make sense. But I wanted to at least tell you that right now. All right, so some easier sledding now. We have a magnification button. They fixed this problem. You used to be, if I wanted to take a picture and half press the shutter button, it would be stuck in this mode and I missed shots on the EOS R5 Mark I because I couldn't get it out. I would have to toggle out of it. But now, thank goodness, when you half press the shutter, it immediately throws you out of the magnification mode. So they fixed that problem. The info button, we've been using that one. It just throws different looks up on the screen with different information. So you can toggle between this as you see fit. I usually turn it off completely. Or if I'm coming into a new area and I want the histogram, then I leave that one on, because histogram will tell you if you're blown out or underexposed. So you can do what you want with that. And the Q button, I mentioned it already. There are two vertical rows of menu icons you can go through. You have the autofocus points, which we've talked about already, and we can, with it on, we can move between them with the top dial here. So we're going to keep that one, but a lot of the other ones we're going to get through. There's servo. You can go to one shot if you're into that. We always shoot servo here. AI focus. The camera will try to decide whether you need to be in one shot versus servo. What is one shot? Might as well explain that now. No, let's wait till we get to the menus. I'll save that. Okay, here is the size of JPEG you want to shoot if you're a JPEG shooter. I always turn mine off. Might as well do it. No, I'll leave it stock because I want to show you when we get to the menu. I'll change that in the menu. There is our drive mode we've talked about. Very, very handy. There is our full versus if we want to crop the image a little. I crop in post, so it's just cutting away. It's like taking a picture and taking a pair of scissors and cutting the outside. So that's all that does. It's not going to like blow up the bird, even though it looks like it's blowing up the scene. You're just cropping in and you're cutting away megapixels. So that's all that one is. There's the get out of this menu arrow. Okay, let's go back to where we were. There's flicker. If you're shooting basketball indoors, you can make a setting change right there so it shoots in between the light pulsations. Very cool for basketball. There is some white balance. I'm going to set mine to Kelvin, so I don't need all the stuff here, but I'm just showing you. There's picture style. I like normal, but I'll set that up later. Subject to detect. We're always going to be on animals. Okay, I'll set that up later though. And then metering mode, we are always going to be in evaluative, which is the stock setting. It doesn't really matter because we're shooting, or at least I'm shooting raw. But if you're shooting JPEGs, it can make a difference. But if you're letting the camera control your exposure triangle, this would be important. I won't explain it any more than that because it's not important to us. All right, great. Now we go back to quick control dial number 1. So that controls the aperture. Okay, simple as that. I'm not going to modify that. Just very happy that it's there. There is a set button. Remember we said that if you hit the set button and you're not in one of the locked modes, it throws you into a full screen autofocus box and it puts a double tracking box around. When you start the autofocus though, the trouble with it is, see that? There's trouble. There's trouble with that thing. I just don't like it. I just have never had a lot of luck with it. All right, I stay away from it. We have a better way to track the full screen, I think. Let's talk about the playhead button. So if you hit that, it brings up the last picture you've taken, and then you can scroll the wheel to see the other pictures that you've taken. There's another new feature as well. If you hit the mode button, it jumps over to the videos that you've just taken, and you could also scroll through those. I don't have any more, just I did one right here. You can play those by hitting the playhead button there on the screen. Yeah, so that's new. But the warning here, be careful when you download your SD card or your CF Express card, because we're used to having one folder where all the movies and the stills are put in one folder, and now there's 2 folders. The first 3 or 4 outings, I didn't realize that, and I deleted all my videos because I didn't realize that there were 2 folders. So be very careful. Maybe I'll flash up in the screen what they look like. So just a warning there. The trash can, of course, hit the trash can. How does the trash can work? If you bring up the last movie or picture, whatever you pushed, let's hit the mode button to jump back into stills. If you just hit the trash can, you can delete the last image that you had. So erase image. You can also delete the entire scene. Trash can comes in handy if you have a gigantic movie that you've just created. Maybe I set my camera up on an eagle's nest and it runs for 10 minutes and nothing happens. It's really nice to just immediately delete that file so you can hit the play button to bring up your movie. I'm all out of movies I just deleted by test one, but then just delete it and it gets rid of everything. Saves space on your SD card. All right, guys, time to move on to this. We're going to hit the menu settings, and I am going to finally start making some modifications for bird photography. So let's go to the next section. All right, let's start making some modifications. Let's go through the menu. I'll explain stock settings, but then we'll make modifications. Okay, let's start all the way to the left. There's the red menu. There's the big camera menu. And again, I've said this before, but the sub-menus, the numbers have been removed, but you can still see the numbers there. If I turn the main dial, we can scroll through the sub-menu. Under the sub-menus are the actual menu items. So let's start in sub-menu 1 of the big camera, and we don't do anything to this because I don't shoot JPEG. I only shoot RAW or C-RAW possibly. But you can control the size of your JPEGs here. Next, we have the type and size of the file you're going to create. I always shoot RAW. Let me remember to try to keep my hands out of here. So I turn off JPEG. And now I need to, oh, it tells you how to maneuver right there, doesn't it? I always shoot RAW. I am going out birding later this morning, so I'm setting this up for real. Hit the set button to lock it in, and then we can see RAW right there. Cropping, aspect ratio full, don't have to mess with that. Exposure compensation, I'm actually going to put that on the rectangle button in one of the 3 or 4 ways. I'll show you how to set up the back button and front button autofocus, but we'll leave it for right now. That when you use auto ISO, the Canon is notorious for underexposing, so you need to bump that up. This is a way to adjust auto ISO to your environment, and it changes depending on the light. So that's an important tool if you use auto ISO, which I do when I have a dark eagle's nest and they fly out of the eagle's nest into the bright sky. I can't change the ISO on the fly good enough or fast enough, so that's the only time I use it. I use it sparingly, but that's a situation where I would use it. ISO speed settings, stock settings, we don't have to do anything with that. Anti-flickers for basketball, indoor basketball, don't have to worry about that. There's a HF anti-flicker. We don't shoot in that, so I'm not worried about that. External speed light control. I don't use a speed light. Nobody does for bird photography. Nobody should because it disturbs the animal. Metering mode, we saw that in the quick control menu. We want that to always be an evaluative. Now, some of my friends do actually prefer spot. So if I put it in spot, see the little circle there? So they say they like that. I'm like, what's the point of that? You're shooting in full manual. They like it because it shows where the very center of the picture will be. So they like that. So it's up to you. It bugs me, so I don't use it there. I use evaluative metering, which is the stock setting. Detect prior AE while in autofocus. So this is one of the automatic picture taking modes, which I never do. So I turn this off because I don't use it. I don't need the camera even thinking about it. Okay, let's go to menu number 3, sub-menu 3. Picture style, again, it doesn't matter. I don't take JPEGs, but if you take JPEGs, this will influence your JPEG settings. So you can play around with different looks. I always set mine for bird photography to neutral. Color space, sRGB is a little bit more narrow color gamut, a few less colors on the palette, so to speak. So I always go Adobe RGB in Lightroom and in Photoshop as well. Clarity, don't worry about it. We're not going to talk about HDR shooting, and nothing else we need to worry about there. Let's go to submenu 4. White balance, I do manipulate. There's nothing wrong with auto white balance. It does a really good job in this camera, just like in the R5 Mark 1. So you could leave it on that if you want, but I prefer to always have the same temperature settings on all my images, and I can adjust them how I see fit in Lightroom. So I like mine a little colder than 5200. I shoot at 4800. And that's just me. You can do what you want. Nothing wrong with auto. That's just the way I've always shot. You can set custom white balance. We're not going to worry about that because I just went in Kelvin and bypassed all that. My white balance is set to 4800 Kelvin. lens aberration correction. So I prefer to do this in Lightroom. So I'm going to turn all this off. Okay, high ISO speed noise reduction. I have seen a difference with this on, so I prefer to turn this off, and I use DxO Pure Raw 4 to reduce my noise in my images, and it seems to work better with this off, and I have played with this, so I don't like that on. Number 5 submenu. We're not going to worry about multiple pictures and melting them together, so don't worry about that. Now, you have to memorize this. As I've said in my other setup guides, unfortunately, it's not Big Camera 7 anymore. It's Big Camera 6, because one of these modes, specifically the shutter mode here, you can't put this anywhere else. I can't put this in the quick control. I can't put this on any buttons. It just lives here. I can put it in my favorites in the star menu, but I mean, I just know where it is. But if you don't manipulate your camera settings very often, you might want to put it in your star menu, because there are times when I shoot electronic first curtain still. The bird is sitting on a perch and it's one of the urban eagles that doesn't care about noise. I still prefer electronic first curtain. Although the problem with that is it's only 12 frames per second. So I'll take some pictures and I'll immediately switch back to electronic. But another point I want to make about this. So in the R5 Mark I, when you go into electronic, it drops you down into 12-bit, which theoretically is going to decrease the quality of your images a little bit. I can't really see much difference between them, but now in the EOS R5 Mark II, you will stay 14-bit in all of these modes, so that's really, really nice. So there's no reason really not to be in electronic. But anyway, that's where they live. Silent shutter function, don't turn that on. If there's a better way to make this camera quiet, and if you turn on silent shutter function, when you turn off your camera, your shutter doors won't close, and your sensor will be exposed to the world, to dust and dirt and things like that, and that'll happen. So I'll show you where to make this quiet in a different place. So leave that off, and that's the stock setting anyway. Release shutter without card. If you go out birding and forget to put a card in and this set to on, you'll shoot like normal, but you won't be recording anything. So that can be really frustrating. I think everybody who's done these videos has recommended that Canon just make this off by default. I have no idea why they leave it on. It makes no sense to me. Again, I challenge anybody to tell me the purpose of that being left on, because somebody's going to mess up like I have in the past. Next. Okay, image stabilizing is off. Okay, so this is grayed out because my lens has stabilization built into it. If you have an old school lens that's not stabilized, you can turn this on at that point, which you probably should. But most of the modern lenses, and even the older EF lenses from the past decade or so, they all have stabilization built in, so that'll be grayed out. We are going to go into here right now, customize quick controls, a very important one. Let's go in, let's edit the layout. Got to give it a minute to think. So we've looked at this, right? This is the quick menu. We can manipulate this. We can get rid of some of these that we don't want. We can slide them around. We can change positions. So let's go back in and do that again and start unchecking things. All right, so autofocus areas, I definitely want that one there. But one shot, servo, I don't want that there, so I uncheck it. I definitely want drive mode there, but there's nothing else that I need here. So I'm turning all this off. There's anti-flicker. And if you use these settings, leave it there. You know, it's up to you. But I don't use these there. I don't want them clogging up my screen space. I don't know how to get down to that one, so I'm going to use my finger to get rid of that. Now, don't do anything yet. So we have 2. If we go down, if we scroll down, there's a magic setting here. Look at that. There's the pre-shooting mode, guys. That is an amazing feature of this camera. So now we have that on the quick control menu. I'll explain that in a little bit. Okay, well, great. Now don't click out yet. Let's go to rearrange. And I like to space these out a little bit. Actually, I like my pre up on top and autofocus like that. And you could do whatever you want. You can throw that one over here if you want. I usually put them like that so I can get to them fast. That's what my quick control menu is going to do if I hit exit and if I hit save and exit. Now let's go in and see. Look how cool that is. And I have my pre-shoot up at the top, which I'm constantly turning on and off. Canon, I wish you would allow us to assign that to one of the buttons. But I mean, I'm getting used to it here on the quick control menu, but it would be nice to put that maybe on the illumination button so you could toggle that on and off directly. Because you don't want to leave that on all the time. You're going to have gigantic 5, 6, 7,000 pictures when you get home from a half day of birding, like I am regularly doing, because I just like that feature so much. Let's go look at it real quick. So if I go into it, I can enable it. And watch what happens when I half press the shutter button. See the little pre right there? Even though I'm not full pressing like that, half pressing is taking pictures. It's taking about 5 pictures, and it's cycling between them and adding 5 new ones and then 5 new ones and getting rid of the old ones and adding the new ones. So when I finally take the picture, I will have the pictures of the animal taking off or running or whatever it's doing. I'll have pictures of the animal taking off, plus I'll have 5 pictures before I even press the button. How cool is that? I got some amazing shots like I've never been able to get before, right? Because unless you just guess that the bird's going to take off and press the button, you can't get shots like some of these. Maybe I'll flash some of these up. So very cool feature. But again, I mean, every time I go take pictures, it's giving me 5 extra shots, and those can add up. So you want to be able to turn that off pretty quick. And I wish we had a button to just one press toggle on and off. Maybe in a firmware update, Canon will consider doing that for us. All right, so very cool. Meter timing, we're not metering at all, so that doesn't matter. You leave that one there. Image review, so when I'm taking a picture, see how my screen is locked? You certainly don't want that. So let's turn that off. We'll hit the playhead button if we want to see an image. So go into it and turn it off. Great. Viewfinder displays disabled, that's fine. Leave that alone. Blackout free display is supposed to smooth out birds in flight in the viewfinder. Guys, I don't have any trouble with birds in flight being choppy in the viewfinder, for goodness sakes. I haven't had that problem since the EOS RP, where it stutters like an old-fashioned movie. So there's no reason to turn that on. If you do turn it on, it warns in the menu that it may take away some of the performance of your autofocus system. So there's no reason that that needs to be on. Display simulation. If you absolutely have to know the true depth of the field all the time, then you want to turn exposure plus DOF. This way it'll show you the true depth of field all the time. I won't do the demo again because we've already done that. But again, it warns you that it could subtract from your autofocus system's performance. So I never turn that thing on. I don't need depth of field because I pretty much know my settings. If I do want to get a deeper depth of field, I pretty much know. So leave it there. Okay, nothing else we need to worry about. One more. Shooting display info. So screen info settings. You can go in here and turn things off. And this has to do with the info button here. With all this stuff on the screen, you can take stuff off and you can play around with that. I'll let you do that one on your own though, but that's where you go for that. Viewfinder display format. So you can make it smaller for whatever reason. You can't quite see. I mean, I still can't see the corners, but I don't like this small view. It's kind of, magnification is decreased a little. So, but if you want, you can play with that. That's what that does. Reverse display on, so if you flip the screen out and you're doing selfie work, it gives you a mirror image of yourself. So, auto power off temperature. I recommend putting this to high. Now do this at your own risk, but I've learned that the temperature warning light comes on too quickly in this camera. And I've had this out in 100-degree temperature shooting stills exposed in the sun, and it's got up to 8 of 10. 10 is where it powers off. It's got up to 8 of 10, but it's never powered off. Because of heat problem. It's gotten a little warm to the touch, but it didn't burn me or anything. And so I found if you set this to high, that warning light doesn't seem to come on as quickly. And when it does power off, it'll be at a higher temperature. So Gerald Undone did a whole video on this, and he recommends the same setting. So, but again, do this at your own risk. I leave mine on high. All right, this is a big one. This is the autofocus tab, so a lot to talk about. So AF operation, stock out of the box will be in one shot. You don't ever want it in one shot unless you know what you're doing with it. Always put it in servo. When it's in servo, it's constantly locking focus on the target. As long as I'm half pressing the shutter with front button autofocus or full pressing the back button, it's focusing, refocusing, refocusing. If the bird flies and comes right at us, it's going to keep focusing, so the bird will be sharp even if it flies at us. If we put it in one shot, when we half press, it grabs the bird and it locks the focus at that point. We can recompose. It's not going to refocus now on the bird in the back like it would in servo. So we can recompose the shot just fine. As long as we hold that down. If we let that go and recompose it, it'll grab something else. So if the bird were to take off flying and we just mash the shutter down, they'd all be out of focus once the bird took off because it's not refocusing, refocusing, refocusing. So don't do it unless you have a reason to do it. AI focus, for me, I found it doesn't work. It tries to decide whether you should be in single shot or in servo. So just leave it in servo. Autofocus areas. Here we go. This is a big one. So we have 12 autofocus boxes now. They're called autofocus areas. In the manual, they call them confusingly autofocus points. They used to call them autofocus methods, then they changed it. They used to call them autofocus zones, even back further. So they keep changing the names of these things. So what are they? These are just like the sights of a BB gun. Let's look at a locked one here. This is an old school one that's not going to misbehave. So you, just like a gun, you put the sight on the target, the tin can or the whatever you're shooting, and then you hold it there and you squeeze the trigger and take the picture. Now there's one more complication here with cameras. You have to start up the autofocus system. So to do that, stock out of the box, you half press the shutter button. The BB gun sight turns blue. That means the autofocus is started, and it means it's locked on the bird. And when you take a picture of the bird, you got a beautiful sharp picture. Let me jump ahead and turn on a function that will show you where my autofocus box was when the picture was taken. And I'll hit it again when the time comes. But let me just jump to Playhead menu 4 and turn on AF point display. This should be on by default, I think. Okay, watch how cool this is. Take a picture. Now hit the playhead button. Look at that. It shows us exactly where the maximum focus was, right on the eye. So a very cool trick. But anyway, back to the BB gun sights. We have many different sights now for many different situations. 12. We have 4 new ones here. And you can see that 4 of them are locked. What does that mean? That means these are going to be old school autofocus areas or boxes, or I could call them boxes, whatever you want to call them, sights of the BB gun. They're boxes, and when you half press and start the autofocus up, the Canon autofocus will look inside the perimeter of that box. It won't look outside of the box. So it'll look inside the box, and that's exactly where the focus will be, if it can find contrast and detail. If I go out here, see how it's red? It can't find contrast and detail. So none of the autofocus boxes, you'd have to use manual focus out there because there's nothing to focus. But if there's any type of difference between blacks and whites, it'll lock right on and take an outstanding picture. Okay, so those are old school boxes, and we have, again, I can pull them up here in the quick menu as well. So let's pull them up here so we can see them. Okay, now we can scroll between them. But you can see a problem, right? There's way too many of these things. We got to get rid of some of them. Okay, so that's what the lock boxes are. Now there's identical autofocus boxes right above that don't have the lock on. What is the story with them? They are under the influence of the Canon autofocus system with regard to subject tracking and subject detection, also known as subject recognition. So let's take a look at that same box without the lock and see what it does. So we line up on the owl, and now when I half press to start up the autofocus system, whoa, what happened to the box? It disappeared. That's because I have subject tracking and subject recognition. Subject tracking is a monster. It eliminates your autofocus boxes. I don't like it because I have that box pulled up for a reason, and I don't want my box to disappear. All right, and it happens with all of them. Let's go grab another one. Let's use the rectangle button to pull this box up. Okay, let's go grab another one. So let's look at the around. So it's not a locked, and unfortunately you can't tell it's locked or not until you push the button. But once I push the button, you can immediately tell it's unlocked because it's gone. See the white around the outside of the frame? The entire screen is now the autofocus box. So, I mean, some of you might like that, but I think it's ridiculous. So I always turn that function off. Let's go turn that function off and see what happens then. So let's turn off subject tracking. And there it is right there, subject tracking. It's called whole area tracking servo autofocus. Guys, it's subject tracking. It's tracking of whatever you've locked onto. So it's on, let's turn it off. Okay, but notice, let's go back here also, go to the next menu. Notice that subject detect is on. Let's actually change that to birds to help us out here in the demonstration. I'll come back to it. Okay, now with subject tracking off, but subject detection on, watch what happens when I half press the shutter button. The box doesn't disappear, does it? But something weird happens. Look, I'm outside of the box. And what's the deal with that? You're supposed to stay inside the box, not with subject detection on. With subject detection on, it gives the Canon autofocus system permission to go a little bit outside the box, and that'll save your butt sometimes. Watch, I'm outside the box clearly. I take the picture and look where the autofocus hit. Right on the eye, that was clearly outside the box. So I do like this one. If the bird takes off and this is all I have and I'm like, trying to keep it on the bird and it goes off the bird a little, I'll still get a picture of the bird. Okay, if I had a locked autofocus point or box on here, it wouldn't be so nice. If I pulled the trigger over here, it would shoot in the background and the bird would be blurry. So I really like subject detection or subject recognition left on with these boxes. I'm going to set some of the old school locked boxes back here when there's sticks around, because this can happen if I'm trying to get pokey down here. Okay, it's looking around. See, I can't get pokey because it's locking on the black and white owl in the background. So there's times when you need an old school locked autofocus box. But most of the time, it works fine in this mode right here. Okay, you see how that works? Let's go see what else. Kind of jumped ahead, but let's go keep looking at these autofocus areas. All right, let's talk again about these three flexible zones. We've kind of talked about them. In fact, we've modified them already, so you know quite a bit about them, I think. But let's take number one here and take a look at that. Let's choose it by Selecting OK. We could do that in the quick menu or the rectangle button. We have 3 ways to pull those up. And we're going to have 4 ways when I get done with you. We're going to set them up on the MFN button so you can toggle. In fact, I went out birding this morning. This is a look into the future. This is what we're going to set up. 1 click of the MFN button and you just toggle from left to right between these. It's very cool. You can, while the bird's in flight, you could even change between boxes. But nevertheless, let's talk about these adjustable boxes here. In the EOS R5 Mark II, we can adjust them as we've already done. Remember that? You hit the rectangle button and the rate button, and then you can adjust them by these 2 dials right here. So that's the main dial. We can control the width there. And then the quick control dial number 1, or this back dial, we can control the height of it. Okay, I think we know that already. The same rules apply to these boxes as the smaller boxes. If you have tracking on, they disappear. Let's turn it on real quick. There it is. So with tracking on, if I start the autofocus system by half pressing the shutter button, the box disappears, just like it did with the smaller boxes. So I really don't like that. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a box. So I don't like that. I always keep that off. So we'll go back to whole area tracking, which is just tracking, subject tracking. Let's turn that off. Okay, but I do have this set. Let's go look in here and just remember what we have. I have this set up to detect animals. Okay, so that means subject detection or subject recognition is on. And therefore, when I start up the autofocus system, we can see a tracking frame inside the actual autofocus area that we have called up. That blue, and it's blue because I'm half pressing the shutter. If I let the shutter go, it's white. But that's called a tracking frame. I like to call it a subject detection frame. And right now, because eye detection is on, that's why it's so small. If I turn off eye detection, now it goes after the face. If I push the box to the side here, now it can't see the face anymore. It grabs the whole body. So now we can see the 3 types of tracking frames that are available. Why are those tracking frames there? It's because I have subject detection on. I really think they should call them subject detection frames because that's why they're on, but they don't call them that. But those are the detection frames or tracking frames or whatever you want to call them. They're on because we have subject detection or subject recognition engaged. If I turn that off, which I can do real quick, we'll go back to submenu 2, subject to detect. I go to none. And now we have an old school autofocus box. Okay, you see how that works? And if we go to the next adjustable autofocus box, it's a little bit bigger, but it's the same type of deal. Because we have subject detection on, we get a subject detection box. And when I half press to start it up, or if you hit the AF on button, you can start autofocus stock out of the box like that as well. It turns blue, meaning it's actually trying to detect a subject. And remember, the cool things with these boxes are they're very forgiving. If I go outside the box, I can still get a picture of that owl. Remember, if I hit the playhead button, it will show you the owl that I got. So pretty cool. See how that works? Let's go take a look at all the boxes again, back in submenu 1. And there they are. So there's 3 zones that are flexible. And that's it. That's all we need to say about them. And I'll show you how to set those up, and I'll show you which ones I keep and which ones I throw out in a little while. All right, let's talk about the very last one now, and this is the whole area autofocus box. And this, if I turn this one on, the entire screen is now the autofocus box. Subject detection is on, so it's detecting. That's a subject detection box. It's called the tracking frame again, but it's really a detection frame is what they should call it. And you can tell I have eye detection off because it's not detecting eye, and those are some pretty big eyes. If I turn eye detection on, now the tracking box is much smaller. Okay, what happens if I go and turn everything off over here? What if I turn subject detection off? What will happen? And just to make sure, we also have subject tracking off. Yep. So now what happens to this box? Now it's exactly like those adjustable zone boxes, but you can't adjust it. And the entire screen is now the autofocus box. But notice if I try to turn eye detection on, eye detection off, it doesn't work. So, I mean, we're going back in time, but this is an old school box, but it's not looking for birds. It still tracks, but it's tracking by contrast and detail, and it's not as powerful. So again, it's super, super important to go back over here and turn on subject to detect and detect animals. Animals are birds, cats, dogs, and zebras. All right, see how that works? Eye detection on. Now we have a detection box. It's got the eye. Turn it off. It's got the head. Now it's pretty hard to get the body because we're always within the perimeter of the box. So this is the one you would use for birds in flight, like swallows. And it's so darn good. You can use this most of the time now. It's definitely better than the EOS R5 Mark 1. I've gotten some crazy shots with it. Maybe I'll flash a couple up where it's just really detected well. So, all right, so that's the end of the autofocus areas. Let's continue on. All right, so let's keep moving ahead now. So we've talked a lot about area. So we've talked about whole area tracking, servo autofocus. Guys, that's subject tracking. I turn that off. There's other ways to turn it on. I mean, it comes on by default. If you really want it on, all you got to do is push the set button and a version of it is on. But see, I pushed the set button and I told it to lock on the background, so it's stuck on the background. So it has its limitations. Now if I do it, it'll stick. But it's definitely whole screen. We got rid of the other autofocus box. So you can pull it up quickly that way if you want. Bottom line, leave it off. Next, subject to detect, it was on people. I moved it already, so put it on animals. In fact, I'm going to get rid of the other options. Eye detection auto, we got all kinds of options to look for the right eye, to look for the left eye. We don't need that. We're going to turn those off. I just want it either on or off, auto or disable. And we said earlier we're going to set that up on our DOF button. Register people priority. So if you're shooting sports and there's maybe your son or your daughter, you can put a picture of him or her in your camera and it'll help the autofocus system find her. So it's pretty cool. I haven't tried it out because I haven't shot any basketball lately. Maybe there's other videos on that, and I'm not going to get into it. Action priorities disabled because we're in animals and not people, but that's pretty cool. It looks cool anyway for volleyball and basketball to help you lock on someone spiking the ball versus shooting the ball. But that's another video, and that's out of my realm. I'm a bird photographer and a wildlife photographer, so that's what we're focusing on. So the cases have changed, right? We had, I think, 4 of them in the R5 Mark 1, and they got rid of them, which was fine. We still have, if you go to manual, we still have the tracking sensitivity and acceleration, deacceleration set to neutral. Remember, the tracking sensitivity is the stickiness of the autofocus point. If you set that up to sticky and locked on, and you have a bird running wild, and it runs between other animals in itself, or it runs behind a tree, it'll stay locked on the best it can. That's what that is. It's a stickiness setting. And I used to use it set to all the way sticky in the R5 Mark 1. And then I used to put acceleration, deacceleration tracking. That's the ability of it to follow fast-moving birds that change direction, like a gazelle being chased by a cheetah, how they change directions. If that's the situation, then you want to bump that up to make it get ready for those fast changes. Or Rudy Winston used the example of a downhill skier, and you're a photographer, and you have to get that moment where when he quickly comes into view, maybe he's in the air and it has to jump on him really quick, then that's the setting you would use. So I used to use these settings in my R5 Mark 1 and they work great. They don't work very good at all in this camera. I had terrible results with them. So I went back to auto and I did one trick with that. I hit the case auto character and I made it more sticky. There's another sticky versus responsive setting here. I just made it more sticky. That's what I'm using now, and it's working really good. You can see this eagle. Maybe I'll throw this eagle I just shot. I've only had this about a month now. I've already got 50,000 shots with it. So I get out about 30 hours a week. But I already got an eagle flying out of the sticks, and it did amazing with these settings. So very happy with it set like this. Okay, so that's the story there. Let's move out of there. So bottom line, set it to auto. Great. Next. So servo, we're shooting in servo. So the one shot, the one below it doesn't matter. But this one matters. So go into here, and I like it set to release. What this does is when I press the shutter button, it takes the picture. If it's a little out of focus, it takes the picture. If I have it set over to focus and I push the shutter button to take the picture and the bird is not in perfect focus, it won't take the picture, and that's really frustrating. By default, it's in the middle. So I recommend setting this over to release. The bird of your life flies away and you have it set to focus and you're trying to take pictures and it's not in perfect focus, you won't get any picture. I'd rather have some picture than no picture at all. So leave it there. We've already disabled preview autofocus. Guys, this is an absolutely terrible name for this. This is autofocus on all the time. Even when you're not pressing the shutter button or the back buttons, it's constantly autofocusing. So it's disabled. Leave it disabled unless you want to go take selfies. If I enable it, it's constant. Look, my hands are off the camera. It's constantly focusing, refocusing, refocusing, refocusing. So the only time you would ever use that is if you're going to take a selfie. Otherwise, I don't see any reason why that should be on, because it's going to waste your battery. Right? So be careful of that. I don't know why they changed the name. This is continual autofocus, not preview the autofocus. But let me turn that off before I forget. All right, let's move on. Lens drive when autofocus impossible. Always leave it on. There's a warning here if you go into info help. It says, not recommended for use with super telephoto lenses, BS. If you turn that off, the lens will stop focusing. You'll be very upset. Leave it on. It does just fine with the modern super telephoto lenses. I'm using the EF lenses, EF 400D, EF 300L, f2.8, and it works amazing with it. So leave it alone. Okay, assist beam. So I don't use this. It's not a laser beam, but it's a red light similar to a laser beam that flies out of this in dark. And it helps work a little bit, but I think it disturbs the birds like owls and such. So I turn it off so it doesn't disturb wildlife. Limit autofocus areas. We don't need 12 autofocus areas. So when I show you how to set up triple front button, triple back button autofocus in a little bit, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff, or a lot of this stuff, but I'll wait till I get to that section so we have it all in the same place. But I mean, if you want to get rid of something, like I never use these two. You just tap on it or hit it with the set button and it's gone. Make sure you hit OK. And now if we go back to the autofocus menu, you can see they're grayed out. Right, and we're going to do that a lot more in a little bit. Okay, next one we don't worry about. That's for people who do a lot of shooting in portrait mode versus landscape mode. You can control where the autofocus point lands. So I use it the same for both. It doesn't matter, but you can separate it and make two different points for it. But for me, it doesn't. I don't shoot. I'm usually on a monopod, so I don't shoot in portrait mode hardly at all. So, and if it is in the middle, I just push it up and it takes like a second. So I don't worry about that. Limit subjects to detect. I don't want to have any accidents. I certainly don't want the autofocus system trying to tell me what I want to focus on. I want to tell it what I want to focus on. So I turn that off. I turn people off. I leave animals. That's birds, cats, dogs, and horses. Racing cars, no. So I just want to be able to turn that on and off. Click OK. And great. If we go back now to menu 2 and look at subject to detect, you'll see those are grayed out, except for animals or none. Good. Eye detection, same story. I don't want it looking for the right eye or the left eye. It takes time to do that, to process that. I just want it looking for an eye, whichever one it sees first, or want it to be able to turn off, and that's it. Great. Next. So these are your manual settings. I do use manual settings, and they're off by default. So if I can't gain focus on a bird in the sticks, maybe it's kind of dark, and I switch to autofocus, I am SOL. So make sure you turn peaking on. Great. And then let's get the sticks into play, the focus guide sticks. Let's turn them on. So let's see how this works. So right now, there's no problem. You can see I got the owl. So I have subject detection on. I have subject tracking off. That's why the box is still there, right? If subject tracking was on, box would disappear. Let's switch it over to manual. So if I go to manual, let's say for whatever reason I just can't get a picture of the bird. Let's go for the owl in the back. If I half press the shutter, nothing happens. Why? Because I just turned off automatic autofocus. I'm in manual, old school manual mode. All I have to do is turn the ring on the lens and watch the sticks and watch the eyes of the owl will start to glow. See them glowing red? And then when the sticks are together in green and the box is green, you are in perfect focus. If I take a picture and we can see no autofocus box. Why? Because the autofocus area is turned off. But I'll tell you, it's a very sharp shot if we blow that thing way up. Pretty darn sharp. Okay, so that's what that's about. Let's put it back into auto, which I have almost all the time. Great. Now you can see the autofocus box is back. The little orange, where did the autofocus actually hit? Box. Very handy box again. We haven't actually come to it. I set that up fast, but I'll get to it. All right. That's it there. Electronic manual function. Don't worry about that. Next, register and recall. So you have the ability to register the autofocus settings, but it won't keep all the settings on your camera, so I don't recommend using this. There's a better way to do this, and I'll show you when we get there. This is kind of nice, an AF setting guide URL. If we go into this, you just scan that with your phone's camera, and it'll pop up the autofocus guide to this camera, which is useful. That's nice they did that. All right, not a lot of action here in the playhead mode. We can speed through this pretty fast. But there's number 4, there's a setting that we use. I don't do any of this stuff. Magnification, I'd leave magnification alone. All right, so autofocus display, that was, for you guys, it'll probably be disabled. So enable that. That's the little box right there that shows you where the autofocus hit. So very, very handy. Nothing else we need to worry about. Let's go to the connectivity menu. I only do one setting here. I put this in airplane mode, which will turn off Bluetooth and network Wi-Fi, so it'll save battery life. If you want to play with it, you can do that. I don't use it. Nothing else in here we need. Okay, the wrench. So this is an important one right off the bat. So record function, card, folder settings. Let's go into it. Don't have to do anything with the first one, but the record options for the camera and the movie, there's the movie, there's the camera. If we go in, they're set not to spill over to a second card. If your CF Express card fills up, the camera will stop shooting. So we always want to set it to auto switch cards. Now once the CF Express card fills up and you're shooting a movie, let's say, it will automatically spill over on to card number 2, which is a SD card. So I always want that set like that, just in case. I don't know why you wouldn't. Another important one. I've had this happen before. I've put in my CF Express card, and I had an SD card in here, and I went out shooting, and it filled up the SD card and didn't get to the CF Express card. I'm like, why isn't it priority 1? Isn't that set by default? It's not set by default. So if you go into the camera record play, you can see priority is not checked, and that should be checked by default, Canon. So you have to check that one yourself. And now it'll always go to the more expensive and super fast CF Express card. Do that with movies as well. Great, so now I don't have to worry about that. All right, last but not least, folder. So you can create a new folder if you want. So I usually don't mess with that. But that does remind me of one thing while I'm here, and you have to be really careful of this. When you go out shooting, if you're mixing still photography, like taking pictures, with taking movies, all the other mirrorless cameras would store those files in one folder. And now for the first time, there are 2 different folders. There's one for the stills and one for the movies. So my first outings with this camera, I lost my movies. I couldn't figure out what happened because I'm so used to going into the stills folder and just copying everything out of there and throwing it on my external hard drive and then deleting. And I deleted my movies and I didn't know what happened. So just be careful of that. Maybe I'll throw a picture of a screenshot up, what it looks like. I can't really show it to you here. There's probably a way where you can convert back to the old way of sharing with single file, but I have not been able to find it yet. So if somebody has figured that out, please let us know down below in the comments what's the fix for that. So just heads up for that. All right, let's go on to the next section. Let's see, format card. I mean, I'm constantly going in here and formatting these cards. So easy to do. I don't have any data on here I want. I'm going out birding and I'll probably forget to do this, so I'm going to do this for you right there. It's nice to put that on your star menu if you forget where that is. I always know it's under the wrench on the first menu. It's so important, but that's one to move. Nothing else we worry about there. Time and date, you can set that. I haven't set mine up when I did a factory reset, but you can go in there and set that yourself. I'm not going to worry about it for time's sake. Now the beeps. This is important. So you want to leave the beeps on. And I hear you. I don't want my camera making noise. We'll fix that right now. But you probably do want this, right? I'm in electronic shutter mode and I have like a auditable sound to tell me when I'm going to hit the buffer. So that's really, really cool. We didn't have that in the R5 Mark I. And I missed that. It's in the R7, the R8, the R6 Mark II, the R10 even has it. If I remember right, the R10. I think it has it, but let's set it up correctly. For one, it's too loud. So where do you set it? You set it under volume, and there's the shutter volume. So let's go in and turn that one down and try it again. Okay, and I'll tell you, Canon, if you're listening to this, can you make it even more quiet? This disturbs the fox that I follow. They don't like any sound. And it's still kind of loud, and my ears aren't the greatest, and I can still hear it. I think it would be nice to half the volume of this, but they don't. Okay, so the rest of these we can turn off completely. We don't need them. Turn them off. Okay. Don't need it. Turn it off. Everything else should be quiet on this. I mean, it's up to you, but it disturbs wildlife, and you want the wildlife to sit there for you, be comfortable with you. Great. Audio monitor, nothing to worry about there. Screen brightness. So I set mine up to 7 so I can see when the sun comes out. You're not going to be able to see if you're backlit. So always set that up. It's going to drive my camera insane, so I'm going to have to remember to do that in the field. I'm going to just keep that down. Actually, I'm going to move that to, I'll leave it at 4. Viewfinder brightness. Auto's no good. I always want the same brightness in there. So I go to manual and then I set that to 6 full power. So I always have the same view here. Because remember, what you see in the viewfinder is what your picture is going to look like. It's not like DSL cameras, right? These mirrorless cameras will show you what you're going to get, which is very, very cool. That's one of the big pluses with mirrorless cameras. Okay, screen cut. We don't need to worry about that one. We don't need to worry about that one. So make sure this is set on 2. If it's set on 1 and you look in here, for whatever reason it's not, it has to be set on 2 so it auto switches. So you might be looking out here at your settings, and when you go to look in here, it's off. It's only the screen. So I don't know why this is default set like that, but that'll drive you insane. So set that to auto 2, and now it'll work just fine. Okay, so now when there's a little sensor here, so pretend I'm putting my eye into this. See how that turns off? And I take my eye away, it turns on. I can't show you this, but the viewfinder would be working now, and now it's not. I don't know why that's not default. It was default with the R5 Mark 1. That's a landmine right there. Don't worry about the other 2 settings. Next, power savings. At the very beginning of the video, I turned all these off. I don't use them. I have extra battery. The battery life is amazing. I get about 3 hours of shooting out of 1 battery, which I can't say about the other batteries. I have 3 batteries, so I never run out of batteries. So I don't need this thing to be asleep when the bird of my life appears, and it appears for 2 seconds. As I said, it does turn on and off very fast. 1001, 1002, so between 1001 and 1002, and then you have to re-autofocus it. By then the bird might be gone, so don't do it. Don't turn those on. This is set. The shutter will close and protect your sensor when you shut down. Great. Reset the camera. That's how we have our factory reset right there, which we did earlier. Not going to do that again. Here's the custom shooting modes. So if you are a landscape photographer and a bird photographer, you can set all these bird settings up in custom mode number 1, say. Just like that. I mean, we're not done setting up yet, but it'll remember everything, not just your autofocus. So that's the way to do it. And then you can shoot custom mode 2 for your landscape setting, which I'm not going to do right now. You can even load them and save them on a card, so you have them. So very handy there. Great. Battery info. So my battery is starting to get worn out, but it wasn't fully charged when I started this. Copyright information, firmware. It's a brand new camera. It's the second wave of these cameras. I missed the first wave, but I finally got mine on the second wave. So nothing else we need to do there. Brand new menu here, the green menu. We're going to be going into submenu 1 all the time. This is where we modify these settings. And there's the little camera. You're probably familiar with that. And we'll get to that when the time comes. Okay, let's see if there's anything else in here. Nothing else we need to talk. Oh yeah, there is some stuff here. Let's go down. Touch shutter disabled. If you enable this for whatever reason, you can take a picture just by doing that. I don't know why you'd want to do it. I guess I've done that before, and when I had the camera like in a weird position. So, but it is off by default, so I doubt if you'll use that, but there it is. Multi-lock function. So my camera overhead has long timed out. That's the R5 Mark 1 overhead. It's 30 minutes. It's gone. I think I'm going on almost an hour here. And my R7 is still going nicely. And my R6 Mark II is still going nicely. That's the front camera. R7 is the back camera. So I'm going to show you this anyway. Maybe I'll throw a picture of it up. But multi-lock function. So notice that the on-off switch here has a setting in the middle called locked. And sometimes I accidentally hit that thing. And if I do accidentally hit it, I can't change my aperture. I can't even move my autofocus point. I'm like, what happened? So if I ever do that by mistake, I don't ever want it to be locked. And you might want it locked, so that's fine, but I don't want anything locked. And there's all the locking options. I don't want any of those things locked. So I'm just going to turn them off, keep my hands off the screen. Great, and hit OK. Great, and now it's in locked, and I can move things around, and things are back to normal. So that one's up to you. Touch and drag settings, nothing there. So next one's nice. This autofocus area selection control. This goes with the rectangle button. So remember when I hit the rectangle button, the autofocus areas pop up, and I can toggle between them. It says hit the MFN button to toggle, is what that means. Hit the MFN button. If I hit the MFN button, see, I painstakingly toggle and toggle through all 12 of those things. Wouldn't it be better if we could, instead of hitting repeatedly the MFN button, wouldn't it be better just to scroll? And then we can go in both directions. That's what that button's for. So the AF area selection control, if I hit that and I go to main dial, now watch what happens when I hit the rectangle button. So see how that's changed to main dial? So now I can scroll that way, I can scroll back that way. So very cool, I think. I mean, I don't use this. I'm going to show you a direct way to toggle between these. But if you're just learning these autofocus areas, maybe you want to set this up. And you can even set that up where the MFN button is. And that would be the way to do it. And I'll show you that when we get into the button setups. All right, so that was that. Nothing else we need to worry about there. Nothing on this one. Eye control. So I've played with it, guys, and for me it doesn't work. The theory is that when you look and focus on a bird, it's going to know where your eyeball is looking, and it's going to jump on that bird. And it does work sometimes, and there's no way I can show you this, right? Because there's no way to show you this. Nobody's been able to show you this. But the trouble is it jumps on sticks, and it just doesn't work. And Canon, we didn't even ask for this. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate you trying to innovate, but there's no reason to have this in here. It's just things can go wrong, and maybe makes the camera more expensive. So big thumbs down on that for me. And I don't know of any. Well, I guess the DP review guy, one of them, it worked for them, but I haven't seen anybody else it's worked for. So leave it off. Touch control standard. Certainly don't want to clear customized controls. So now we go to familiar territory, the orange menu or the little camera. Nothing on this first one we need to worry about. We're not going to worry about bracketing. Let's go to number 2 submenu. So I do use this one. Same exposure for new aperture. So I turn that on. What does that mean? If I change the F number or the aperture, it automatically corrects the other members of the exposure triangle for me. If I change the shutter speed, it doesn't do anything. If I change the ISO, it doesn't do anything. I like to control those myself, but it's nice. I don't change the aperture that much. When I change it on the fly, it's nice to have those other things corrected. So just go right on down here. ISO speed, shutter speed. TV means shutter speed, by the way. So now that will correct if I do change the aperture. So some of my experiments where I do change the aperture, it's really, really nice because I don't have to mess with that. It does it for me. Nothing else we need to do here. Okay, guys, this is another brand new setting. I love this setting. Look how cool this is. So continuous shooting speed. If we go into this, well, there is our drive modes, right? There's high speed continuous plus set to 30, as I said, and this is for the electronic shutter. High speed continuous is set to 15. I guess they're not calling it high speed continuous anymore. We have high speed continuous plus, high speed, and low speed set to 5. I can change these. How cool is this? And this, just me, this is what I do. High speed continuous, I go into it and I bump it up to 20. So very cool. That's just like the R5 Mark 1 when you're in electronic shooting mode there. It's 20 frames per second. I've been doing some experiments between the two. That's been very handy. And then if we go down to low speed, I bumped that up to 12 or 15. I leave it on 15 just so I can remember. So that's up to you. You can have it lower, up to you. So very, very cool. Probably not going to be changing those very much, but that's where it is anyway. It lives in the orange menu or little camera submenu 3. Next one we don't need to worry about. And then I don't think we need to worry about anything here. So the star menu is a place where you can pull any item in this camera, any setting in this camera into the star menu so you can remember where the heck it is. So very handy as these menus get more and more complex. I'll show you how to do one here for time's sake. So go into it, click OK, add My Menu 1 tab, OK. And then we want to configure and then select items to register. And there you go. You can spend a lot of time going through this. I'll set one up for you. I know where one is. And it's this new one, continuous shooting speed. That cool setting I just showed you. So hit OK or set. Hit OK one more time. And there we go. If we go out of it now, there it is. We can scroll up to it. And there's what we just set up. Maybe we want to move that down a little bit to 12. So that'll do it for this section. We have the menu set up for birding and wildlife photography. We went through all the key settings here for us. We spent a lot of time on the autofocus settings, and now we understand how they work. So now it's time to set up our button focusing. All right, guys, let's get ready to set up triple back button and triple front button autofocus. We have some other buttons to modify first. And I'm not going to explain these because we did that earlier in the video. But the first modification is the depth of field button. I'm turning that off and I'm putting eye detection on, eye detection off. So let's go do it. So let's go into the kind of new green menu here, custom buttons for shooting. We're going to be using this path a lot. You already know this path. I don't need to explain it, do I? There's the little camera right there, the cartoon. The green glowing dot is what you're about to modify. You can see it moves as we turn any one of these dials. Make sure you stay in the left-hand column. Those will adjust settings for the stills mode. And then over in the right-hand column, those will adjust settings for the movie mode. You have to do those individually, and we're not doing movies in this video. So let's go find the DOF button just by turning any one of these dials, and I saw it go by. There it is right there. Let's go into it by tapping on it or pushing set. And it should be, the depth of field should be right there. This is take 2, so I tried to reset all the buttons. But if you ever get confused and want to go back to factory reset, you always go to the top left-hand corner. And that's the stock factory setting of whatever button you've played with. All right, so let's go down and find the little eyeball. Okay, and there we have a new button. That's the AF on detected subject. So that's for people mode. And we don't mess with that, so don't go to that one. That's the eye detection autofocus. That will also start up the autofocus. So we don't go to that one. We want this one right there, eye detection. So click OK or set. And now watch what happens. Eye detection off, eye detection on. Eye detection off, eye detection on. Note, if yours isn't working, what does that mean? That means that you are on one of these locked zones here. So here's a locked autofocus box. If we go to that one and I try to turn eye detection on and off, I'm pushing the DOF button, nothing's happening. That's because it's locked to an old school button. It doesn't have subject tracking or detection available in this button. It just looks for pure contrast and detail, which is fine. It does an amazing job with that. But if you're running into that problem, that's the problem. Great. Let's go to the MFN button now. This is our workhorse, at least my workhorse. As long as your index finger is good and strong, this is amazing. I'm going to be able to toggle between the different autofocus areas just with a push, 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 as you'll see. Let's go modify it. Same place. Let's go find it. There's the name of it, the multifunction button or the MFN button. Let's go into it. Be careful, make sure you're in camera mode. And there's our little beauty right there. See that little one? Direct autofocus area selection. That is such a cool button. Let's go set for OK. And let's go see what happens now. Every time I hit that button, we toggle through a different autofocus box. How cool is that? But you can see the problem. There's way too many of these boxes, so you got to cut it down. And the boxes that you select for this button really depend upon what type of birds you're going after. If you're going after hummingbirds, it'll be smaller boxes. If you're going after eagles, you need a big, long box, and you need the full screen tracking box as well. So I'm going birding, just kind of general birding this afternoon. Let's see how I'm going to do that. So let's go back to the limiting area, the AF area. And let's go, the limiting was number 5. Here we have all the limiting menu options, but limit AF area is what I want. So for general birding, I'm going to turn all of these locked ones off. It's not that I'm not going to use them, but I'm putting those on my 3 back buttons here. So I want one autofocus point. A spot autofocus is what I go with. I don't use that one. And I use 2 zones, not 3. And those are the 4 that for general birding, that's what I use. Great. So click OK. Be careful now. OK. Some of these you have to hit OK twice, but it looks like we're good. Now watch when I go to cycle between these. Great. See how we got all 4 of them? There's the single autofocus point box. There's a adjustable box 1, adjustable box 2, which is too small. And there's the full screen as the autofocus box. Okay. Now, mind you, remember I have subject detection on and subject tracking off. If we go back and look at menu 1, you can see whole area tracking. That's subject tracking code for. That's off. Remember what happens if that's on? I mean, we just covered this. I shouldn't do it again, but remember if that's on, what happens to our autofocus boxes and we half press the shutter button? Boom, they're gone. Every one of them is gone. It defaults to this gigantic full screen autofocus box, which is great, but I only use that when a bird is flying and it's blue sky. Although I will say it's getting better. I know some birding channels are now recommending to use this all the time because it's getting so good at tracking, but I don't use it all the time. But anyway, I do have that turned off. So if yours is jumping around like that and the boxes are disappearing, that's the problem. Why is the Canon autofocus system going outside the perimeter of that box? You remember why? I mean, if I go way over here, I can still get the picture. Look at, I'm way outside the box, yet I still got the owl. How is that possible? That's because I have subject recognition on, subject detection, that's also known as. See, I have it set to animals. If that was off, it would stay inside the perimeter of the box. But anyway, I digress. We already talked about all that stuff. So there we go. I have 4 boxes, but the next problem is they're not the way I like them. All right, now let's modify some of these flexible zones. The cycle I like is small box to bigger box to gigantic full screen box. So let's make this one smaller. Remember how to do that? Good, you remembered. Go to the rectangle button and go to the rate button and modify it however you want. For general birding, I like a small box, a little bit smaller than the R5 Mark 1s, which you can't adjust. That's about the size of the R5 Mark 1s. But I like it a little bit smaller and maybe a little bit shorter. I can still get birds with that in the tree, and that's probably good. Okay, so there's my first box. If the bird is a little bit more in the open, then I can use a little bit bigger box. So let's fix that one the same way. How do you snap this back to the middle? Push the joystick or the multi-controller straight in. Let's make that one a little bit bigger. So I hit the rectangle again, hit the rate button, and let's adjust this one to very similar to the R5 Mark 1s, kind of a longer one for birds in flight, which has a kind of complicated background, but not like a crazy complicated background. Probably make that a little bit wider. That's very similar to the R5 Mark 1s, maybe a little bit shorter. So that's what I will use today. So let's toggle again. We have a spot if I see a bird in the bushes or with a more complicated background around it, I can use that one. It won't go insane, like the box is still there, right? If I had tracking on, that would disappear. So, but if I'm close to the bird, it'll stay there. Great. And then I have this little box, a little bit bigger, and then I have a little bit bigger box. And then last but not least, one more click, and now the entire screen is the autofocus box or autofocus area. I have eye detection on, so let's talk about that for a second. Remember, the DOF button is set for that. If I hit the DOF button, look what it detects now. It detects the face. So if the eye detection is off, face detection is on. Can we get Gumby? No. Can we get Pokey? How do I get Pokey? I can't get Pokey either. So we need to pull up a different box. Okay, how about the single autofocus point box for Pokey? Will that work on Pokey is the question. And it will not work. So I need a different solution. I need an old school lockbox for that, because if I take a picture, you can see we got the owl in the background. So no problem. None of my 4 buttons assigned to the MFN button are working. So we need to set up the AF on button next. Let's go in. Let's go to customize buttons. Let's go find the AF on button. There it is. Let's go in. Now you don't want to double start autofocus if you can help it. If you're pumping autofocus on and off to try to gain capture of something, to gain focus, you might accidentally hold down the AF button and you're pumping the shutter button and you don't realize that you're really not releasing the autofocus system. So it's best to turn this off. We have a button right here we can do that with, and that switch to registered autofocus function. But see, there's an info detail set here. We definitely want to go into that because there's going to be more menu settings. And this is take 2 on this, so I already set that, but yours is going to look like this. You have autofocus area. You have all these emergency override settings. Be careful you don't check any of these, because if you check these and you push and hold down the AF on button, these settings will override anything else set up in the camera. So they're very powerful. So let's go to autofocus area. Great. And let's choose a locked autofocus area or autofocus point or autofocus box. And I recommend the spot autofocus here. OK. Menu. OK. Again, you have to hit OK 2 times. And make sure, I should have went through that to make sure nothing else was checked. Let me go back in there real quick. Recommend you do this. Oh, a good thing I did that, right? Look I didn't check it. You have to check it and set it. Check it and set it. And sometimes it doesn't stick. So check, and then let's go through to make sure nobody else is checked. So cool. Just double check. So we have the autofocus point locked on. Great. Autofocus area is checked. Now go to the menu. OK. And we should be good to go. So now when I get on Pokey with my little autofocus box here, we know that doesn't work. If I hit my AF on button, we got this little box. I'm on Pokey. The autofocus is not started because it didn't turn blue. If I half press the shutter button, it's turned blue. We have gained focus, and the autofocus system is behaving. It's not going outside the box. Take a picture, and let's see where we hit. Right on Pokey. You want to get Gumby? No problem. Use the multi-controller to swing the box down. And when I hit this box, it'll show up in the same place. Half press to engage autofocus. Let's see what we got. Got Gumby. See how cool that is? So now we have double front button autofocus set up. Let's go for triple. I'm going to set the AE lock button, the star button up to just have another locked autofocus point. Let's go in. Let's go find it. There it is. Let's go into it. Now there's an autofocus option there which has the info details set, but again, I don't want to start up the autofocus. All right, we're doing that with the front button. So there is an option to go down here to the camera with an arrow through it right there. Register recall shooting function. It's got that info detail set. This one we got a little work to do because we have to uncheck all of these because this is an override setting. I mean, these will, if you push the star button, these will come on and override everything else. So I'm going to use my hands just to get rid of all this stuff. Even if it's grayed out, uncheck it. Uncheck all this stuff. Unless you want to use it for some. I'm going to leave, well, I'll uncheck that too, just to make sure. A lot of settings here. Great. Now let's go back and let's find autofocus area. Great. Let's go in here. Let's check it before I forget to do that. Check it. And now set it. Great. I like this one right here. I like the single autofocus point around set for this one. So it's not going to no monkey business. It's not going to go outside the box. Old school contrast and detail. And be careful now. Menu. Okay. Great. So let's get the owl. Let's say we think the owl is going to fly or something. Let's just hit the star button. Notice it's not starting autofocus. I have to half press to start autofocus, full press to take the picture. Great. Prove it. Great. Right on the owl. Can we get pokey with this one? Yeah, we can kind of get pokey with this one. I mean, we could use the smaller one, but that'll work too. Let's see if it got pokey. Got pokey. Great. See how that works? All right, guys, so there you have it. That is triple front button autofocus. So what did we do again to review? So the MFN button controls 4 different autofocus areas. And probably 85–90% of the time I'm out birding, this is all I use. I just quickly toggle between these autofocus areas. But there's our front button number 1. Front button number 2 would be the AF on button. So we have a spot autofocus there for, we got pokey with that. The star button will be a little bit old school locked. And these are locked, right? The AF on button's spot autofocus is a locked button, so it doesn't, no tracking, no detection is on, so it'll stay inside the boundaries of that box. And then we have the star button, the same, a little bit bigger autofocus box around. So that's triple front button autofocus. What do I do with the rectangle button here? That's the AF point selection button. Just call it the rectangle button. What do I do with that? I set exposure compensation on here. Because the auto ISO, even on this Canon EOS R5 Mark II, it is a little dark, a little underexposed, just like the Canon EOS R1 is. And even the Canon EOS R6 Mark II, they are always underexposed a bit. So for me, I need to click it up maybe a full stop or 2/3 of a stop. So let's go ahead and set exposure compensation up on my rectangle button. All right, before we modify this rectangle button, we better move this somewhere because I need this to adjust the flexible zones, right? So I can't just make it disappear. So I'm going to move the rectangle button onto the emergency movie start button, which I don't like. If you want to keep your emergency movie start button, I can set the rectangle button up on the illumination button just as easily. So I'll show you how to do both of those right now. Let's go into our same pathway. Custom buttons for shooting, the green menu. And let's go find the emergency movie start button. There it is, just called the movie shooting button, but it's for emergencies. Let's go into it. And there is our rectangle button right there. Let's just go over and click OK. Great. Now hit the emergency movie button and it starts up. And then we can scroll between these different autofocus areas. We've already modified this in the other part of the video. Now you're worried that when we go to movie mode, maybe we won't be able to start up the movie. That's not true, but let me show you. Let's go over to the movie mode. Right, and let's hit the start button, and you can see it works just fine. So we didn't harm it in any way. Right, let's go back. And let me show you how to set up the illumination button. You can probably guess how to do it, I bet. That same pathway, customize buttons for shooting. And let's just go find the illumination button. There it is right there. Let's go into it. And there is our rectangle button. Let's go over, Click OK. And great, now we hit the illumination button and there we go. So we have the rectangle button set up in 2 different places. So now we're ready to go modify this rectangle button. So let's go ahead and set exposure compensation up on my rectangle button. Okay, same pathway, let's go find it. Okay, let's go into it, and it's down here a ways on the left, I believe. There it is, right there. Exposure compensation, click OK, and great. Now if we hit the rectangle button, nothing happens. How come? Because I'm not in auto ISO. So let's go ahead and do that. Apologize, this is going to probably mess up my back camera here a little bit. Let's bring up the ISO, click in that, best way to do it, and let's just hop down to 200 and scroll down a little further. Main dial's controlling that, and now we're in auto ISO. And this is not the norm. When you go out birding, for some reason it's underexposed. So, but we can still adjust it here. So how would I adjust this? Because we're clearly, the auto ISO is overexposing this frame. So if you push down the rectangle button now and hit the main dial and just scroll it down, see how we're going down, down. That looks about right for my back camera. Would be happy with that, I bet. So we're a little over a stop down. And there, we've kind of adjusted the auto ISO with the exposure compensation. That's the way I do it. All right, don't use auto ISO. How about let's set up quadruple front button autofocus. I can put another autofocus box right there. Watch this trick. Let's go back into it. Let's go find it. Right. If we go look for the eyeball, we go down. I guess we have to go up a little bit. Where's the eyeball? There it is. Let's go over. Not that one. That's the one we have set up in our depth of field button, our DOF button. I don't think I did that yet for this part of the video. But there's eye detection and autofocus. So that will start the autofocus up, and it will start the eye detection up. And I'm pretty sure it's going to start subject tracking and recognition on whatever you have in the main menu, right? I don't use this because I have it on the MFN button already, but I'll show you. Just click OK and you're done. So now the scenario would be you see an eagle flying towards the nest. It's open blue sky, not complicated background. So if you mash down the rectangle button, you can see we are starting because it turned blue. And yeah. That's it. I'm half pressing the shutter, so I'm kind of double starting, but that's really okay. And we'll take a picture way over here just to prove we got it, and let's see if we got it. Let's go into the playhead. And yeah, you can see the red box right around the owl. So, I mean, there you go. If you want, you can set up quadruple front button autofocus. But again, I like the exposure compensation here. Now, let me show you how to set up triple back button autofocus, where we take the autofocus start off the shutter button, or off the front button as I call it, and just individually start autofocus with these 3 back buttons. Here we go. So step 1 is we need to take the autofocus startup off the front button or off the shutter button. So let's go back into our same path. Go into customize buttons. There's our little toy camera. And remember, wherever that glowing green dot is, that's where you're about to modify. That shows the button you're about to modify. Remember, we have 2 columns. The column on the left is for stills or pictures. Column on the right is for movies. If you want to do movies, you have to individually make those settings. So we're at the shutter button right now, kind of right on the startup. Let's go into it and just simply go over here. No AF. Notice there's an AF right there. There's an AF right there. We don't want autofocus start here. Autofocus start is off. Metering doesn't matter. We're in full manual anyway. So that's not going to affect anything. Now watch what happens when I try to get the owl and I half press the shutter. It's not turning blue, is it? So the autofocus is not started. So what's the solution? Well, we need to set up the AF on button to start up the autofocus, and it's really easy. Let's go in and find it. Same pathway. Find that AF on button. There it is. Let's go into it. And if you're just joining us for this part only, you'll be up here, and that's where you want to be. That's your stock setting. And that's all we need to do. And you have some options. You can assign an autofocus area to this all the time, but I wouldn't recommend that. But you could. We could go in here and we could go to autofocus just like we did before in the last section. You can check it and set it. Let's put, whatever. Let's put the full screen autofocus area or the whole screen autofocus area here just for fun. Got a double OK on the way out of here, so be careful. And now watch what happens when I hit the AF on button. The entire screen is now the autofocus box. Okay, so that's just the way you could, that's one way you can do it, but I don't recommend that. I would recommend letting the MFN button still toggle between those 4 autofocus points that are already set up, and just use this only to start the autofocus. So let's go make that happen. Let's go back in. Let's go find it. Let's go into it. And let's just go to Info Detail Set, and let's just uncheck that. That's all we have to do. Then click Menu. OK. And now we have 4 different autofocus boxes we can toggle through. And you tell me which one to stop on. For that owl, I would probably go right about there. And I'm half pressing the shutter. Nothing's happening. That's because we took autofocus start away from that. But if we just push AF on down, see how it turns blue? And the subject tracking has got the bird's eye, and the eye detection is on, so it's grabbed the bird's eye. It's not going outside the perimeter of the box like insanely. So great. With subject recognition on, we can still go outside of the perimeter of the box a little bit to detect, and we can still get the picture. So if you screw up, that will correct your screw up potentially. Okay, don't like that box? Well, we can toggle the MFN button to do that one. An eagle flying in, I can keep the eagle in there really easy, because if I get off the eagle a little bit, it'll still track way over here. So pretty cool. And remember, to make it go, we have to push the AF on button to take the picture. All right, great. So we got single back button autofocus set up, but we're at least utilizing all the autofocus areas, and that's probably 85% of the time you'll be able to kind of just scroll through there and use those. But let's set up the star button to do something. So let's go into that just like we did before. Let's go back to the green menu, custom buttons. Let's go find the star button. Let's go into it. Now we have to have autofocus start on. So we got to scroll back up. Some of you guys just coming here will be set like that. But right next door to it, we have a autofocus start. Oh, cool. We have an info detail set button. So we can go into that, and these will all be unchecked. I mean, I already set up front button autofocus, so my autofocus area is still there. And great. So let's go set that up. Autofocus area, remember, check it and set it. If it's not checked, it won't work. And if something went wrong, go back and look, and I bet it wasn't checked. And guys, you choose whatever point you want to set up on the star button. I prefer to have a locked box here that's not venturing outside. So I like this one for the star button. The single autofocus point around, it's called. Hit menu, you got to double OK this. Great. So we're trying to get pokey there. It's easier to hit the star button. There we have an old school autofocus box. It's a locked box. No subject tracking, no subject recognition, no eye detection on. Take the picture. Let's review the picture to see if we got pokey. We got pokey, no problem. Okay, what about eye detection? What if I hit the AF on button here? Let's turn on eye detection. And now let's hit the star button. Can we get the eye? Let's go back to this place we were getting the eye before. You can tell it's not getting the eye. It's not tracking or it's not recognizing. But we still got the owl just fine, right? It's just a little bit bigger box. Great, so that's double back button autofocus. How about triple? Let's set the rectangle button up. That's called the autofocus point selection button. Call it the rectangle button, please. It's much easier. Let's set that up to invoke the largest autofocus box that we have. So let's go in, let's go find it the same pathway. Let's go into it. And the only way this works, because we can't use this again. Look, there's an autofocus start. Well, we could use that, couldn't we? Because that will start the autofocus. Yeah, we could use, that's one way. We could use that one. Right? If we hit the rectangle button, now we have a full screen autofocus box. Great, that works just fine. It's tracking the eye, so the subject detection and subject tracking and eye detection are working. What if I turn off eye detection? Now what will happen when I mash it down? It still goes after the eye because this is an eye detection on mode. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, let me show you another way. Let's go in here. Let's go back to it. Let's go in here and let's go down to that camera with an arrow going through it. There we go right there. See, it's got an info detail set. Those are magical settings. So let's hit the info button. And guys, if you're just coming here, these will all be checked. I've already been playing with this in the last part of the video. So I uncheck them all. You're going to have to uncheck every single one of these. These are override settings, and if you hit the rectangle button, these settings will rule. They'll override everything else in the camera. So uncheck all that stuff until you come down to the autofocus area. And then let's go in here and let's select the whole area autofocus where the entire screen is the autofocus box. Okay, great. That's what we just did, but there's another way to do it. And this time, let's check whole area tracking. I think it does that anyway, but just to be doubly sure. Whole area tracking servo. That's just subject recognition. Okay, just to make sure. I'm pretty sure it's on anyway, but just to double make sure. We can even check that. Subject to detect will be animal. Let's go to make sure it's animal, and it is on animal. Great. We can even make sure that eye detection is on, just to be 100% sure. Great. Now we have everything set up, but we haven't started our autofocus yet by pushing the button. So if you go all the way down, right there, AF operation, check it, set it to use autofocus. That'll start up the autofocus system, and then we're set. Don't register these settings. It causes all kinds of trouble. I don't have time to talk about that, but just don't hit that button. Okay, let's check to make sure we got everything right. Eye detection, subject detection, subject tracking. We have our full frame autofocus box set up. So hit menu, okay, and now let's mash down the rectangle button to see what happens. It's really about the same thing, I think. I don't think there's any difference in this. So the eye detection off, if we turn it off on the DOF button, does that do anything? No. It's still grabbing the eye. So I think the first way I showed you was easier. I don't think there's any difference. But if somebody knows that, some technical person, let me know if there's a difference. I'm pretty darn sure there's no difference. I think subject tracking recognition are on when you hit that little eyeball, or set it up the little eyeball method I did at first. All right, guys, that'll do it for the video. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll get them answered. Please give me a thumbs up if you got anything out of this video. Also consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.